West Virginia head coach Neal Brown is joining us on Heartland College Sports. I'm Pete Mundo. It's great to have you on board, whether it's on our radio show, of course, on the podcast, on the YouTube page. We always appreciate you guys being here as well, hitting that subscribe button as we continue on covering the Big 12. The largest independent media outlet covering this conference is here at Heartland College Sports. Neal Brown is here. I would argue that last year, Coach, you look at that year, what the expectations were from the media, at least, and what you guys ended up doing, 9-4 bowl win. You got the mayo dumped all over you. At what point did you say to yourself, you know what, we are going to not only exceed expectations, but blow away the expectations?
Well, I really felt like last spring, as we came through our winter program and got into spring football, I knew we were really good up front on both sides. We had a chance to be a lead on the offensive line. And I thought our defensive line made a lot of strides. And anytime you're good on both fronts, then you got a chance to be successful. And then our work ethic through the summer, and we got into fall camp. We played Penn State close for 3 quarters. We just didn't take advantage of opportunities offensively. And then we were able to win a couple close games in September, and then we were off and running.
So that moment, when I look at last season, and you're right, the Penn State game, the final score doesn't do it justice. Was it those first 3 quarters early in the season when you said, you know what, we've got it in the trenches, to your point, to hang with a team like Penn State? That was a top 10 program all year. I like our chances in the Big 12 to make some noise.
Yeah, that reaffirmed kind of what I felt like in spring football and in fall camp but I knew we had some ground to make up too, because if you go back and look at that game, you know, we had defensively, we let them have, or they earned, however you want to put it. They got a couple of explosive pass plays on us, and we were young in the secondary, so it took us a little while to mature there. And then we just didn't execute down on our side of the field against Penn State on 2 4th downs and a 3rd down. And if we could have got one of those 3, we're right there in the thick of it. And you're talking about third in the 3rd and 4th quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but that game it reaffirmed that I knew we were on the right path, because when you look at Penn State, we were able to not control it, but we were able to limit them in the run game. They have 2 exceptional backs and NFL offensive linemen, NFL tight end. And then if you look defensively, that was the most talented defense that we played all year. And we knew that going into the game. They were elite. I think the NFL draft kind of backed that up.
Yeah. So what about, you look at the changes coming to this conference, OU and Texas leaving, of course. You got the 4 new teams from the 4 corners coming in. You're only playing one of them this year. You've got Arizona on the road. So your schedule doesn't look all that different compared to what it's been, at least last year with the 4 new teams coming in. This new world of the Big 12, what does it mean for West Virginia? You guys will have some of the longest road trips, obviously, in the conference. So how do you prepare for that? And what does it mean for you and your program to be in this conference now that is truly expanding coast to coast, essentially?
It is. We're across 4 time zones, and I think that was the vision of the commissioner, and I get it, and it makes a lot of sense. I think we're the most exciting conference in the country. I think we've got a little bit of ground to make up to be the best football conference in the country, but I think we're definitely the most exciting. I think if you look at from a depth standpoint and a competitive balance standpoint, the Big 12 is number 1. 1 through 16, there's quality teams. There's teams that have had recent success all the way through, and so it's highly competitive. And I think the thing for West Virginia is we're in with peer schools that are on similar footing that we are. There's a lot of tradition-rich programs, just like West Virginia, that are in the league, but I think it gives us a chance. And the hard thing about this league is everybody that you play has an opportunity to beat you. The encouraging thing, or the exciting thing about this league, is you got a chance to win every single game. And so. And that's me talking as the head coach of West Virginia. But if you had 15 other head coaches, I think they feel the exact same way. So it's really going to be an exciting 2024 season, and it's going to be hard to predict. I think that you could make a strong argument that maybe up to 8 teams have an opportunity to win our football league this year.
I mean, I think you're right. You could probably push 10. I mean, I'm looking at just your first 4 games here in the Big 12. Neal Brown joining us, of course, on the show. Kansas, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, Kansas State. You and those 4 teams all should believe going into this year that you're playing in Arlington. And that's what makes this, as you noted, I think the most intriguing conference in America.
Yeah. And you could make a strong argument for all of those.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think in last year's success for all those teams you just listed, Oklahoma State makes it to the title game. We were up 3 with about, 8.5 minutes to go in a game that we played right here at Mountaineer Field. And unfortunately, we had one of our jammers on punt return run into our punt returner and completely changed the game there late or midway through the fourth quarter. And so Iowa State, they had a lot of injuries, a lot of turmoil early in the year, but they've got a ton of production coming back. Kansas State finished with a strong win. They've got a lot of excitement around their young quarterback. They return a lot. Kansas, most energy that's been in that program in a long time. Coach Leipold's done a great job. They've returned Jalen Dan. And that's, you can go Utah. You can go, there's a bunch of teams in our league that have reason to be excited, and we're definitely one of those teams.
You mentioned the quarterback position there for at least Kansas, but what about your quarterback? Garrett Green made huge strides last year. What is the next step for him look like as you go into this year with, the expectations that hopefully you guys get the bounces your way and end up in Arlington?
Well, he's as dynamic as anybody in college football. He can really run. He's a fast kid. He breaks tackles. True dual threat. If you look at what he did in the run game and then in the explosive pass game last year, really special. I think that his biggest area of improvement is he's got to improve his accuracy. He's got to improve his completion percentage. He finished the year at 53%. Now, part of that is we threw the ball down the field a lot. We're a run first team, and we take shots off run looks to try to get behind the secondary that are coming up and playing the run game. But he's got to get more effective in the red zone and on third down from a completion percentage standpoint. And if he can do that, which I really believe he can, he had a great spring. As he transitions to the summer, there's a couple key fundamental areas he's got to continue to improve on. But I think he's ready to take that jump. And again, this is only going to be his second year as a starting quarterback. And I really think he can make upwards 8 to 12 percentage points increases to go from a 53 to anywhere from a 61 to 65%. And now if he does that, and he stays and he maintains his ability to throw the ball downfield, and he can be an effective runner like we know he can be, then I think that proves that he's one of the top players in college football.
Well, that would be something. Now, everyone I've talked to media-wise in Morgantown or around the program has raved about your backup quarterback, and I just want to talk about him for a second. And in a day and age where there's NIL, transfer portal, guys can go wherever they want. Coaches are calling guys, or at least they're having people call guys. They're trying to pull them away from the program. How do you end up in a situation where you can keep a guy like Nico there and happy and satisfied and say, hey, you wait your turn, you're going to produce here at West Virginia?
Well, I think it starts with trust. It's been a process, and he understands that we've invested in him, and he understands that he has shown a great amount of improvement over the last 2 years. And I think you also have to credit his family. He has an upbringing that where he's gracious, and they've allowed him the patience necessary to improve. And so Nico was undoubtedly one of our top players in the spring, and one of our most improved player, if not our most improved player on our entire roster. And so really excited. At some point, he's going to be called upon this fall. I don't know when. He's basically played 3 complete games here, and we're 3-0 in those games. So he's a winner. He proved that in high school as well. At some point, he's gonna be put in a position to go win games for us this fall, and then long-term wise, he's definitely our starter of the future.
So does that mean are you foreseeing a package for Nico, or do you see him starting games?
No, he came in last year. Garrett got hurt on the first series of the Pitt game. I think the 3rd play overall, and Nico came in and played that entire game. And that was as an intense rivalry as you're going to be part of. Then he beat Texas Tech, who was a preseason top 20 team last year. He beat Oklahoma State at Oklahoma State as a true freshman. And so Garrett's had some time missed due to injury. And if that's the case this fall, which we don't want it to be, but if that's the case this fall, Nico's more than ready to come in and really step into where we can win games because of him.
Mm-hmm.
We may have some packages where we play, and we haven't really got that far into game planning mode yet, or how we're going to play out the season. But there could be some instances where we have some packages where he plays for sure.
What about your running backs? I mean, I think the running backs in this league are very underrated nationally. Those of us that follow the league understand the depth that that position group has in the Big 12. But do you feel like you've got, with C.J. Donaldson and Jaheim White, the best 1-2 punch at running back in this conference?
Well, without studying all of them, because there's some new teams in the league, I'll say this. I don't know where we rank, but we have a lot of confidence in our guys. I think two guys, one's coming off a tremendous freshman season in Jaheim White. He's dynamic with the ball. He's undersized just from a height perspective. He's got a real thick build, and he's powerful. He's got great change direction. And he played really well for us down the stretch. And I'm excited for him because he was learning. It was all new to him. And one of his biggest skill sets is being able to catch the football. And now that he's been in our offense now going on 2 years, we'll be able to incorporate that more so and get him involved in the pass game and get him the ball in some different ways. And then C.J. Donaldson had a tremendous freshman year, played injured for most of his sophomore year. He got all-season surgery on his shoulder and missed our bowl game, but it was important. I thought that rehab time was maybe more important than him playing in the bowl game and not being full speed. And so he's really changed his body. He's had a great offseason, and I'm looking forward to him, getting back and getting to the form that he's shown at some points last year, but a lot of his freshman year, man, he was just a big, strong back. So we've got a good – CJ goes about 6'2", 240, and just different running styles, but both can be extremely effective. And we got to figure out ways to get them both their touches.
What about the big guys up front? You mentioned how important it was to you in the offseason. Zach Frazier goes in the second round of the draft. Doug Nestor signs an undrafted contract. Replacing those guys, knowing how important it is as a run-first team, how do you feel about that group up front right now?
We like our group. We're going to miss those guys. Doug played well for us last year and was really our vocal leader. And then Zach Frazier, I've spoken a lot about this. He completely changed our program with his work ethic. And I thought he was the best interior offensive lineman in college football. And I think he's got a long, bright future in front of him in the NFL. Excited for him and the Steelers. But what I'll say about our offensive line, I think it starts with our left tackle, Wyatt Milam. I think he's as good or better than any lineman in our league. I really feel like he's got the ability and the production to be a first-round pick next year in the NFL draft. This is going to be his fourth year as a starter for us. Our left guard, Tomas Rimac, comes back. He was a freshman All-American just like Wyatt was. He's going to be a junior. This is his third year starting for us. I think he'll be an All-Big 12 player. Brandon Yates moves over from guard last year where he started every game to center. He started at center in the bowl game for Zach. And I think that as he's continued to improve and he's really improved his leadership and his communication skills, I think he'll be a plus player for us as well, potential all-league player. And then Nick Malone and Jaquay Hubbard on the right side. Those guys, Jaquay started 25-plus games for us in his career. And then Nick Malone stepped in and started, I think, 3 or 4 last year. And so we've got a lot of experience. 5 of our top 7 returned. And then we feel like we've recruited well. We've got some guys that redshirted last year that are ready to take the next step and be factors for us.
Well, the recruiting element of this, trusting the climb, having the season you had last year, the NIL world that we find ourselves in right now, how do you feel like the program is positioned on that front today versus where it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago during this process?
Yeah, we were a little late to the new world of college athletics, college football.
Were you resistant to it, or is that just broadly
speaking?
I
just think we were slow to react, just the whole thing. To me, you could see it coming. Mm-hmm. And we just, as a coach, you kind of knew how the, NIL and transfer portal, you could kind of see this. I'm zero surprised at where we're at in college athletics and college football right now. But we were slow to react, and it hurt us a lot in the 22 season. Thought we rebounded, and we've got a good plan. I think we're a program that we're going to continue to recruit the high school level. We want the majority of our team to come through high school recruiting, and then what we want to do is we want to invest in the development of the guys that we evaluate at the high school level, invest in the development, and then put a real onus on retaining those guys in our program that have been productive, and then going out in the portal and filling needs. And so I think we're positioned well. I think at West Virginia, we've got to become the master of what we can control. And what we can control is really from a player retention and an evaluation standpoint. Those are things that we can control. We can't control some of the other outside things, but I think we can do that. And then we've got to continue to be innovative on how we can be different, how we can be unique in this changing landscape.
Let's just touch on, Coach, the best recruiting pitch for you. I mean, every fan I talk to is rooting for you, wants you to succeed, even as, the climb was happening. And then, of course, encapsulated with last season. But, there were a lot of complaints, for lack of a better word, made by your predecessor about how tough it is to recruit, get people there. You feel like, and fans will say, the guy who's the perfect fit for that program. So what is that recruiting pitch like for you, and getting guys to say, hey, we've got the facilities, we've got what you need, and you can have an awesome experience here and get yourself to the NFL. And West Virginia has a long traditional history of doing just that.
Well, you want to coach and you want to play at a place where it's really important. And there's no question at West Virginia that football has been really important for an extremely long time. 15th winningest program on all of college football, a place where the fans, it really means something to. I think if you look at there's very few places in the entire country where the football program and the university are so interwoven with the state. And you have the opportunity here at West Virginia through football to really be a beacon of hope and provide energy for an entire state of people. We don't have pro sports in West Virginia at the highest level of professional sports. We're the only Power 4 institution in the state, and depending on when the population numbers are taken, anywhere between 1.8 and 2 million people that are really behind the Mountaineers. And so I think that's the big sell. And then on a little bit smaller level is we've heavily invested in our facilities and our support areas for our student athletes. If you look at from strength conditioning, nutrition, sports psychology, our academic services, how we've incorporated technology into our program, I would make a strong argument that we're doing those things as well as anybody out there in college football.
Last thing, Coach, your schedule. We talked about it a little bit earlier. It is just brutal. You got Penn State again. You've got one of the great rivalries in college football against Pitt in week 3. And then you have this Big 12 slate that we touched on earlier. Do you like the way the non-con sets up for you guys, knowing you have 9 conference games on the back end, when, let's be honest, the SEC is only playing 8. You're going to play 11 Power 5 games. Do you like that, or do you think there's a downside to it as the season wears on?
Well, I think that the downside is that's very few people are doing that, and this is going to be 6 years or 5 of 6. In COVID, we only played 1 9-conference games, but this is going to be 5 of the 6 years here where we've played 11 Power 5, and we're one of the few teams in the entire country that's doing that. And so the disadvantage is that our strength schedule from a non-conference standpoint, which we have control on, we don't control necessarily the conference schedule. We control our non-conference. And what we're doing is we're putting ourselves at a disadvantage compared to our peers, and we're playing 1 less home game. And I think those are both that's a disadvantage for our football program, the state of West Virginia, the city of Morgantown. I think those are keys. I think the perfect world for us is if we're going to play 9 conference games, then we play a regional rival, which I'd be in favor of playing Pitt every year. You play an FCS opponent, and then you play a group of 5 opponent, preferably having both those games at home. And then Pitt and the Pitt game rotates, or your regional rival rotates. I try to be our fans. We're proud members of the Big 12, but also the away games are really difficult for our fans. So I am sensitive to the fact that the regional rivalries really mean something. We played Virginia Tech here, or we played a home and home with Virginia Tech, the Penn State home and home. Those are some games that are really important to our fan base. And I'm just talking big picture here, but I think the right thing for us moving forward is the 9-conference, the FCS at home, and a group of 5 at home with a regional rivalry, which my vote's for Pitt. Mm-hmm. But with that being said, that's the future. We're talking about the here and now. And I think the way that it's not, I think the way that we're looking at this from a program perspective is we open the season with Penn State, and it's going to be a nationally televised game with a ton of excitement around, and we're going to kick college football off right here in Morgantown versus a top 10 opponent. And it is a regional rivalry game. It's a opponent. We have a lot of respect for Coach Franklin and Penn State and what they've done, but it's a great opportunity for us to really showcase the growth and the improvement that we've made. And so we're looking forward to that. Then we have Albany at home, and then we'll go up the interstate here and play Pitt in a game that's, again, I think that's a special rivalry. Our fans love it. I think it's great. Get a chance to play in the home of the Steelers, so an NFL venue, and then we get right into it. We're not easing into this conference schedule either. Now, we're getting right out the gate in the month of September. We're playing 3 of the favorites, and so I think those first 5 games are going to be critical to how our season goes.
It is. I mean, it is just a brutal open of the season. But listen, I think West Virginia, unlike last year, will be a potential trendy pick here this year going into the season. Coach Neal Brown on Heartland College Sports. I'm Pete Mundo. Coach, thank you so much for the time. We appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.
Pete, thanks for having me on.
And we appreciate our listeners, whether you're on the radio show, the podcast, or the YouTube channel. Subscribe, and we'll talk to you soon here on HeartlandCollegeSports.com.